Please do me a favor before we start. Please subscribe. It is March 2022. According to recent stats that I read, 6 in 10 Protestant churches, evangelical churches in North America, are either declining or plateaued in their attendance. More than half saw fewer than 10 people become new Christians in the past 12 months. It would seem that evangelical congregations are seeing an average weekly attendance of 65 or less. That's the average evangelical church. And most churches are defined as being small churches. Most churches fall into the category of being small churches. I also read or looked at a study that was given by the Harvard Institute for Religion Research. And they've shown the decline of churches over the past, I would say, 2 decades. In the year 2000, the average size for a small church, or what would be classified as small church, the average size of the congregation would be 137 people. In 2008, that dropped to 115. In 2015, again, it declined to 80. In 2020, that was just 65 people. I suspect that this downward trend will continue, especially in the face of COVID. I know that many churches are struggling right now, even though they're open, even though many of the restrictions have been lifted, especially in Canada and in North America, that many churches are struggling with seeing their people come back. And I wouldn't be surprised that that number 65 in the year 2020, in a couple of years or a year or two from now, will even be less. This is why I'm doing this. I'm in a place where the majority of North American pastors are at. I'm a pastor of a small church. I pastor a church called Cornerstone Community Church in the city of Edmonton. Now, let me just give you some history or understanding of my context. Edmonton, Alberta is located obviously in Canada. Edmonton is a city of 1 million people, roughly. We have the core of Edmonton, which is about, I would think, about 800,000, 800,000 people. And then the outlying suburbs are another probably 2, 3, 400,000 people. So our major population, our major population center is about 1.1 million people. Our church is located right in the heart of that. We are centrally located, and we are near the major university of Alberta called the University of Alberta. I am a single staffed pastor in the sense that there are no other staff here helping me. There are no other staff in the staff of our church. Yes, we have more leaders. We have other leaders involved, but I am currently the only staff of the church. I'm a bivocational pastor. I know that many churches, many pastors are in that very similar situation where you have to work in the church, but you also have to work outside the church. And so I work full time outside of being a pastor, and I pastor full time. People say about pastors who are, part time. Well, there is really no such thing as a pastor who is part time. If you are a pastor, it is a full time ministry, job, occupation. And so, for those of us who are in bivocational ministry, we realize the load and the stress that comes with trying to pastor, but also provide for our family and work outside the church to supply what we need to live. I do receive a small salary from the church, but the majority or the most of my income comes from outside the church. We are a multicultural, multiracial, and multi-generational church. We have many different cultures in the church, many different age groups, which is wonderful, and many different races or ethnicities within our church. As far as our doctrinal background, I am Pentecostal as far as my history is concerned, and we are a Pentecostal church in doctrine and theology mainly. Although I have been finding that as people are coming into the church, that there's a real diversity with doctrinal backgrounds and theological backgrounds in our church. Our church does rent its space. Like many smaller churches, we look out to see if we can supplement our annual budget, and so we rent our church building on Sundays to another church in the afternoon who has services here. But we also rent our parking lot during the week to businesses that are situated right around our church. Our church is in a area where parking is somewhat of a premium, and there's a need for parking, so we supplement our annual budget through those things. As for me, I've been in pastoral ministry for about 30 years, three different churches. This is the third. I've been in this church since the spring of 2018, so I've been here for 4 years. Prior to this, I was an assistant or associate pastor in the other two churches. I pastored with my father in Montreal and then here in Edmonton, and he was my senior pastor, and I worked with him. I mainly did youth, young adult ministry, music ministry, praise and worship ministry, and so forth. Uh, Now, my father is retired. When I moved to this location, he came along with me and is a member of our congregation here. I am married. I have a wife, and we've been married for 28 years, and we have 5 children, 2 adult children, and 3 children under 3 or under 4. And that's a probably a story for another time. Let me give you a little bit of context or history as to how the church has done under my leadership, if you want to say. I guess that may not be the best way to put it, but let me just tell you what I came to and where we are at today. When I came in 2018, our average Sunday attendance was 20 to 25 people. In fact, 25 people would have been a very good Sunday. Today, our average attendance is about 60 people. Last Sunday, March 6th, we had 68 people here in service. When we came, there were very few musicians. Small churches often are struggling to find musicians. When we came, that was the case. We had most times simply just a piano player. Today, we have a full praise and worship team with a group of good musicians and singers that help lead our praise and worship. And I have a good music leader, praise and worship leader, who takes the leadership in that for me. When we first came, there were few children in the church. I think 4, if I counted right. There were 4 children in the church. Generally, on a Sunday, we can be between 12 and 15 children in service. Last Sunday, there was 22 kids in our service. When we first came here as pastors here, the church was in what I would say a plateaued or state of decline. Um, I don't believe that you can really be plateaued. I think you're either growing or declining. And so, but they were in that state. They had been that attendance for many years, and I know that even there were some people who were considering looking elsewhere because the needs just were not being fulfilled for their family. Today, we're growing. Today we're growing. As you can see, as I said, when we came, 20 to 25. Right now, there's at least average attendance of 60 to 65, and it's growing. When we came, our facilities desperately needed updating and repairs and maintenance. And I'll take probably an episode one of these days and fill you in on that and show you kind of what we've done. The sanctuary here, which is where I pastor, this is the church sanctuary that you see behind me. The sanctuary did not look like this when we first came. In fact, the chairs that you see behind me are literally, I think, 3 months old. So we've done major updates and renovations and upgrades to the building that were needed. So today our facilities have been dramatically improved. As all of you who are probably watching this understand, we've just gone through 2 years of COVID, and in our situation, thank I'm so thankful because God's been faithful and good, and we've continued to grow, and our finances have improved each year. In fact, our finances last year were the best that they've been since I've been here as the pastor of the church, and we've seen double-digit percentage growth in our income year after year after year. So we've been blessed. We have walked this path for the last path for the last 4 years, and we have been tremendously blessed as we've led the church here. The question that you might have or wonder is, why do this? Why set up this diary of the pastor, diary of a pastor? And I've been thinking about this for a while because I know, being a small church pastor, being a pastor of what is considered the average size in North America, I know a lot of the struggles, I know a lot of the situations, I know what it's like to, in some sense, feel like you're pastoring all alone. And so my goal in doing this is to encourage pastors by allowing you to watch my journey as a pastor. Um, like many of you watching, I'm a pastor that seeks to see the church that he leads grow, to develop, and become everything that God has designed it to be. I don't want, and let me be right up front and honest with you, I don't want Cornerstone to be a small church forever. And I don't believe that, given our context with hundreds of thousands of people that are around about our in our neighborhoods and our location centrally in Edmonton, I believe that as a church we should have something, we should have a vision for something bigger. And so I'm not expecting or looking to see Cornerstone remain small. I'm looking for it to grow and to continue to grow as we minister here in Edmonton. I am anticipating the day when I can function in this full time as a pastor without my attention being divided by needing to work. And yet I understand the difficulties and the trials and the struggles of trying to work, and yet my attention being divided with really what I want to do is, and that is pastor a church. I want to be a pastor full time without my attention elsewhere. And so I want to give an inside look at the joys and the struggles that happen in my life as I lead this church. I want to give you a sense of the everyday week or every week happenings from the context that I pastor in, to inspire you in your situation. And so my hope is that as you go through this podcast, as you go through this journey with me, as you see the things that are happening in my life, as you see the things that are happening in our church, and as I lay out things week by week as to what we're doing, that it'll encourage you and inspire you wherever you might be leading and wherever you might be pastoring. You know, here's the thing that I find. There are a lot of resources out there that are coming in from the big churches, and they're wonderful, and they're great, and they're good. But when I look at them, they really, sometimes they're really hard to break down, and they're really hard to use in the context of a small local church. You know, they're often designed with the big church in mind. And so there's not a lot out there from the context of a small, even regular sized local church. And so that's what I'm trying to do today. That's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. That's what I'm trying to do for you as pastors, is just give you an insight, give you a view, give you a diary of what it is coming from my life as a pastor here in Cornerstone. What can you expect as you watch this video or go through this series with me or walk through this journey with me? This is what I want to kind of do week in and week out. I want to produce basically a weekly podcast, a weekly video that you can watch and be encouraged from. One of the things I will do is give you the weekly metrics, and by that I mean our numbers, where we are at, how we're progressing. You know, I know some people don't like to talk about numbers. I believe numbers are important, not because necessarily from the spiritual sense in that that's what we always should be shooting for, but numbers give us a good understanding of how we're progressing, what we're doing well, maybe what we're not doing so well, and just gives us a goal to aim at. So the first Sunday, as I mentioned, that comes on in this episode is Sunday, March 6th. That's where I'm giving the definition, or I'm defining, that's the beginning point. Sunday, March 6th, we had 68 in attendance. 68 total people with 22 children. And that was just 1 week ago. Weekly highlights from our church, and this is something that I want to do as well, give weekly highlights, some of the things that happened in our church, and even from our Sunday, what I preached on, and so forth. The weekly highlight was this week in our service, we had communion, we had a baby dedication, I preached on the power of God's word, and then we had a potluck fellowship after the service. Yet, it was a full Sunday. I preached less or shorter than what I typically preach. And we had a fellowship time after the service, not only because we had the baby fellowship or baby dedication, but we've been just coming out of COVID. Restrictions are lifted, and relationship is extremely important to our people. And so we had a time of fellowship and relationship building after the service. Uh, Another thing that I want to do is share ideas and resources. Maybe there's ideas that I've had or resources that I've found, and I think that they may be beneficial to you. I want to share those with you. Some of the resources that I want to give, and you'll be able to find them at the end. I'll give you my website to find them. Is I want to offer up to you as pastors even some message outlines and thoughts like that, because I know, being bivocational, how difficult it is sometimes. You're working all week, and then you got to come up with a sermon on Sunday. And so I have a lot of my messages are outlined, and so I will be presenting that and giving that to you, and you can use them or throw them out, whatever you want to do. Um, Looking at the struggles, looking at the difficulties, looking at the growing pains, looking at the different things that come against us, or sometimes even can get us down as pastors. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about leadership topics, defining leadership and how we pastor and how we lead here in Cornerstone, and maybe it'll encourage you. Looking after yourself as a pastor. Often we want to serve and help others. We want to look after others, but we don't look after ourselves. And, if we don't look after ourselves properly, we're not going to be able to serve and look after other individuals, look after those who are under our care. I want to address at times the fundamental characteristics of our church. When I say our church, I'm talking about Cornerstone. These might encourage you. They might give you thoughts. They might give you ideas. This was part of our vision as a church. These fundamental characteristics of who we are as a church and why we do the things that we do. And so I want to outline those things, and also outline and share our vision and our goals and how we're going to accomplish them. For our church this coming week, we're going to be looking at and having our annual business meeting. So this coming Thursday, we're going to be having our business meeting, and we'll be going through our finances, obviously from the previous year, our budget for 2022, and I'm excited because we're going to be sharing vision that night to our membership and going through that. And so I want to share that with you as well. I want to be able to answer questions or have thoughts come from you and comments, and maybe just give feedback on those things. The other thing I want to try to do is have periodic guest pastors come online, whether they be pastors of big, small, rural, or urban churches. We'll have to see. But you know what? Sharing the journey that we all share in, it is great to hear from pastors what they've gone through. It is great to hear from pastors what's going on in their churches, how they're leading, the vision that they have there in their churches, the struggles that they've had, how they've overcome them, how they've dealt with problems, how they've gone forward in ministry. And so, I want to look at doing that periodically, have guests come on and share with you just their pastoral journey and what it means for them to lead the church that they are leading in the context and in the situation that they're leading. My real desire is I want to be vulnerable and open. I want to share the mistakes, and I want to share the wins. And my hope is to honor and glorify God in this situation by being an encouragement to other pastors, and especially pastors that are pastoring smaller churches and maybe often feel like they're all alone in it, but recognizing, hey, There's another pastor out there dealing with the same situations that I'm dealing with. I want to do this because when I look into our community, when I look into our world, when I look into the society and the cultural happenings of our day, I know and see the need for strong churches. We need strong local churches in the neighborhoods that we live in. We need strong local churches in the cities that we live in. We need strong and local churches in this world that we're living in. You can see everything that's happening in our world today. And in order to have strong, vibrant local churches, we need to have strong and vibrant pastors. Except the Lord build it, they who labor, labor in vain. We know that God is the one behind it all. I am absolutely fully aware and understand that unless God does it, it can't be done. Okay? And by the way, I understand that I do not have all the answers. I understand that I don't have everything figured out. I understand that I make a lot of mistakes. I understand that there are things that I don't know about. And so I know that God has to be the one. And my encouragement to you is, in everything is look to God. Look to the leading of the Spirit in your life as you pastor and lead your church, because God is the one who's going to build the church. In each of our situations, God is the one who's going to do it. And we must be completely dependent upon Him, and we must be completely in a place of faith and trust in Him. And our vision must be from Him. And so, yes, except He builds the church, we who labor are going to labor in vain. We're going to walk in a place of being empty and ineffective in the church if we're trying to do it in our own strength. But that verse does say that those who labor. So, yes, God is the one who builds, but He uses people. God establishes people. He establishes laborers. He establishes leaders. And He has determined that pastors and us as shepherds, and some would say under shepherds, we are here to lead and guide the church. And so we need to encourage one another. We need to help one another. We need to build up one another, because this is a difficult time. It's a difficult situation, but praise God that we have one another to encourage one another. So that's where I'm coming from. I recognize and I see everything that's happening in our world. I recognize, and I've talked to pastors who are discouraged. I've talked to pastors who are frustrated. And I know the situation that many are in, even coming out of COVID. I can see sometimes the strain on the faces of pastors, and thinking about how are we going to come out of this and move forward. And you know what? God's been good in our context and everything like that. But I know in some contexts it's been very difficult and the situation is not very good. So I'm hoping that as we go through this and as you watch my journey, as you share in my journey, that it'll encourage you and it'll inspire you. And most of all, I hope that it inspires you to trust the Lord in whatever ministry that God's called you to do. Because listen, you know what? We can't simply replicate everything out there. That's another thing that I sometimes get frustrated with is, churches have programs and sometimes big churches, and there's ministries out there that come in and say, just replicate what we're doing and you'll have the same success that we're doing. And we see that people try to do it and it doesn't work. You know what? Our context and our situation has to be trust the Lord for what He wants to do in our lives. Trust the Lord for what He wants to do in our church. And yes, let us encourage one another in the things that we do. So that's where I'm coming from in all of this situation. Let me close out by saying this. My goal is to put these podcasts, these episodes up on Tuesday, recognizing that I am busy with life, with church, with work, with family, but I'm going to do my best to be faithful in providing that. I would encourage, if you have questions or comments or thoughts, that you either submit it below in the comments section of the video, Or if you want to reach out to me through my website, which I'll give to you in a moment. But I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear the struggles. I would love to hear the successes. I'd love to hear the wins. I'd love to hear the ideas. You know, it's not all just about me. That's for sure. We all can encourage and build up one another. So if you have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, resources, let me know about them. You can go to my website, as I said, at chadfisheronline.com, and you can just look for the Diary of a Pastor tab there, and you will see resources. You'll have notes. I'll give weekly updates there as to the church. Uh, you know, some of the metrics that here, so that you can find them and have them there. Um, but go to my website and look it up and see if there's things that you can use in your ministry and that can help you. And you can also contact me through my website as well. Um, Finally, if this has been a blessing to you, please subscribe. Please share it. You know of other pastors who are needing to be encouraged. If you know there are other pastors who are in similar situations, please share it with them. Um, you know, let's build a community of pastors where we can encourage and build up one another and see the kingdom of God brought forth in our world today. Well, thank you for watching. It has been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for watching the first episode of The Diary of a Pastor. I hope that you have a blessed week. I hope you have a great Sunday service. I hope that you have a wonderful time in the presence of God. And always remember, except the Lord build the house, those that build labor in vain. God bless you all. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon.